Get ready to quit the build.
Here we go!
The QTB crew is rounding up all the gaming news and hot topics of the week with a little extra something. And here are your hosts, Bruno and Nick.
What it do? Welcome to the QTB podcast. We're so glad you could join us. My name is Bruno, and with me as always is my childhood friend and co-host Nick. Bjorn in the USA. How are you doing, Nick?
Bjorn in the USA.
Yeah,
fantastic.
buddy.
I do love me some Bjorn, so I'll take that all day. And the boss, of course.
The boss, right? The boss. There's only one boss, and you know who it is. It's Springsteen.
All day, yeah.
Okay, all day.
So yeah, doing good, man. Well, it's been an eventful weekend. As you may have seen, we have the a couple other avenues of reaching out there with the Quit the Build podcast. We've been getting in the mix on Reddit lately, and of course, I have to give a shout out to my man, Senor Grafo. You saw this guy, right? He was doing the. He does hilarious comics, and definitely check him out. He has his own subreddit there. That is amazing. But yeah, he had posted a gaming article, or rather a comic that just resonated with me. I thought it was hilarious about someone being like, hey, you want to check out the big game like Super Bowl, but it ends up being Overwatch League. And the guy's like, oh, I could get into this. And Senor Graffo's whole thing is that he'll do like edits of a comic if somebody comments, usually early on. He's very popular, so it's really exciting whenever that happens. And he picks your comment for some kind of like extra panel. And so I got hit with not one but two Senor Graffo edits.
Two.
Oh yeah, it takes two.
Get out of the recording.
And
booth.
He got me good. I'll tell you how, because I had talked about my experience growing up. Listen to me, this happened like a couple of years ago. Growing up, my experience with the first season of Overwatch League. That for the finals. I told this.
We did a lot of growing up last year.
Well, that's true. A lot of self-reflection, right?
Those were in the before times.
Yeah. But yeah, so in this comment on his post, I had talked about how, I went with my wife to kind of a local bar that's just kind of a generic, almost like locally owned, like Applebee's style sports bar, and they had the finals for Overwatch League. That was going to be on ESPN, which is a pretty big deal. And so my wife and I had a jersey and an extra Philadelphia Fusion shirt, and they were in the finals. So I gave her my shirt, and we headed out, and we were like, we're going to go to this bar and like cheer on our team. And I was like so excited because I didn't expect to see anyone else. That was
you're gonna get the whole sports experience.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. Yeah, if I'm gonna sports, I'm gonna sports properly. If it's on ESPN,
we're gonna do the sports. We're gonna do it.
Yeah, needless to say, we get there and like no one else obviously is there for Overwatch League, but none of the TVs are on ESPN because of
you're telling me
on.
Out of all those people, there wasn't a single. What is this world coming to?
I'm telling you, why you got it as sports. So, yeah, anyway, I talked to the bartender. I'm like, hey, can you put on ESPN? And he does it at first, and then he looks and he sees what's on the screen, and then I guess he sees the logo for the Fusion, and he sees our jerseys, and I just look at him and give him a nod like, yeah, this is happening. And he was not into it. He was not amused. But I mean, it is what it is. So over the course of the evening, we're having a great time, and all the people that were around us, there wasn't a whole lot going on sports-wise. So they're asking us questions because we're getting into it. Like I'm providing like my signature color commentary during this and like explaining like what's going on to these guys. Yeah, and by the end of this thing, like everybody at this bar that was at the bar was kind of into it, not like actively cheering, but like whenever I get excited about a big play. They would get excited too. And because it was a fairly local team with Philadelphia.
It's just like my wife. She does the same thing. She's just like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, babe, I got a victory royale. Yeah. And she's just like, you get him, hon. You get him. And I'm like, yeah.
You show those kids. Yeah.
Show those 9-year-olds.
But anyway, yeah, it was a really cool experience and one that I wanted to just kind of share on the comment. And sure enough, like before you know it, some awards start pouring in, but then Senor Grafo comes in with the edit and then my reply to it. But where he got me was I had said in the post, I said that I had saddled up to the bar, like SADDLED. And in that story, I should have said sidled, I guess is the actual term, with an I instead of the A. And so because I said saddled in the edit that he drew for me, he had me on a horse saying like, hey, turn that on, bartender. And I didn't realize until someone told me like, yeah, that's why he did that. I'm like,
turn it on, bartender.
So it was a very, very entertaining weekend seeing all the comments to that. And again, shout out to Senor Grafo. Awesome stuff. Awesome content and always very funny.
Senor Janine Garofalo, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Is that the full name?
Garofalo. We appreciate your comic. That it made us smile. And now that I know the whole backstory with the saddle thing, oh man, makes it even that much more epic. So yes, that's exciting. Well, we're going to be doing something that's really exciting is we're going to be doing a sweet gaming merch giveaway for our listeners. Can you believe it, Nick?
Yes. Tell them what they could win.
Well, I will tell you what they're going to win, but first they have to rate us on Apple Podcasts. See, that's how you get entered into the giveaway. We have tons of little pins and stickers, gaming inspired, 90s inspired merchandise to give all of our millennial listeners out there a blast from the past, but we need you to rate the podcast first. That's how we're going to grab all of the entrants for it. And believe it or not, these ratings really do help us out. And we appreciate all the support that we get from you guys. So it's very important to us, mainly to give back to you because you guys are inspiring us. You're motivating us to create more content, and it's exciting. So we just want to give back to you and let other people join in to the Bruno and Nick QTB experience and get everybody on board the QTB train. Are you ready, Nick?
Bruno, I'm not a very tech-savvy guy. How can I leave a review on Apple Podcasts?
Well, you're going to have to download either the Apple Podcasts app or the iTunes app, and then you just search for Quit the Build in the Apple Podcast app, and then you can give us a review that way. It's pretty easy. So we're going to give more details on our website, quitthebuild.com, so you can go there and check it out, and we are going to give you step-by-step instructions so that way you can be entered to get the awesome merch. And we're going to be doing this every month. So
unbelievable.
That is, it's if you don't get it the first month, don't be sad, because next month rolls around, bro. And we all know February is a short month, kids. So, you know, I don't know why they did February dirty like that. It's both of our birthday months, and they decided, you know what? This crappy month needs to not have 30 days like the rest of them. We're going to give some of them 31 and just take away from February because I don't know. It just gets the short end of the deal. Yeah. But we have a great episode in store for everybody today. But before we get started, today's podcast was sponsored in part by Pierce Unlimited. For marketing media that works and bespoke design to power your business, visit pierceunlimited.com. Nick, let's light this candle. What do we got? We got
some interesting articles and a very special segment at the end of today's show. Before we get into the news articles, I'll kind of give you a sneak peek. And we do have a blog article on our QTB blog on quitthebuild.com. We're doing a indie spotlight section where I got to sit down and have a chat with some game developers about an upcoming game that they have. And if you are a fan of that retro SNES style kind of adventure RPG, if you grew up with those kind of games, you definitely want to stick around for that interview. But first, we do have some things to talk about. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about how we have some news that there possibly could be some big news about what's going to happen with the future of Anthem, whether or not that game is going to... Yeah, that's a whole conversation. But first, our first article for the day is all about Ubisoft. So, I know that, if you ask most people... what is Ubisoft all about? They're going to say, well, they're all about...
They're going to say, Nick, it's Ubisoft, not Ubisoft. And then we're going to get in a fight about how to pronounce it.
Okay, let's just get that out of the way now. Yeah,
We'll
that's
get
right.
that
There's no
out of the way
umlaut.
for those
Yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
out there and going to say, no, it's pronounced this way. Actually, they did do a video, and I believe the president of Ubisoft, because I'll say Ubisoft to be the Ubisoft side, and you say Ubisoft, so that way you can have that side of, yes, that's how we're going to do it. But
I'm self-conscious now. I can't do that.
Yeah. You have to. Now, you have to own it. You have to own it now.
Okay.
Even the president said, doesn't matter what you call us as long as you remember us. And that's the important thing.
As long as you buy our
them.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. As long as we get those dollars. So what is going on with Ubisoft?
Yeah, so, like I was saying, if you ask most people kind of what they think when they think Ubisoft, that they want to talk about, that they have a pretty steady release of kind of mediocre AAA game releases, right? They very rarely have a massive hit on their hands or something that really tries to innovate. But at the same time, that kind of tried and true Ubisoft formula of open world style games and kind of homogenized gameplay and content has kind of become almost a meme in the gaming community. And it looks like with this article that they don't really want to quite be as reliant on AAA game titles in the future. And for a company like Ubisoft, that is a very big deal because that's basically their revenue model. They want to take a look instead at free-to-play games and also take a look at their back catalog in order to make more money per this IGN article. So there was an earnings call, and they talked about the kind of the Q3 financial results from last year, and talking about going forward that they have plans for some AAA game releases, but they don't really want that to be the focus of their business model. And I'm telling you, that is, from a company like Ubisoft, what is your immediate reaction to hearing something like that?
My immediate reaction is Battle Pass. That's the Battle Pass. That's my immediate thought because we all know that that's where everyone's going. And if you're not on board the Battle Pass ship, guess what? You're going to be ship out of luck because you're not going to get the same experience, obviously, if you're not on board with this, because that's what everyone's adopting. Halo Infinite's going to adopt the Battle Pass formula. Call of Duty's already done it. Fortnite has paved the way and basically is the entire reason. So if you don't like the Battle Pass, then you can blame Fortnite because they definitely made it popular. And there are good ways to go about it and bad ways to go about it, but that's my immediate thought is definitely they want ongoing streams of revenue because it's not enough to just make a game anymore. And honestly, I don't want a new iteration of something every year. Look at how successful Grand Theft Auto Online has been. Mm-hmm. It's been going on since 2012, right? Is that when?
It's crazy to think about that. I think it's 3 console generations now.
Yeah, that it's
GTA
been on.
has been their game. GTA 5 has been the game. Yeah.
So I mean, and like I said, I think it was 2012 that's when Grand Theft Auto 5 was first released. So people, yes, they want Grand Theft Auto 6, and we obviously want the new iteration. There's still a thriving community on Grand Theft Auto Online that they're pumping out content every month. They've always got something new in the works, and they're enticing people to come back with free money and new missions and all this kind of stuff. So I think it goes to show that type of mentality of let's release something every year is going by the wayside, and we want longevity. We don't want to have to learn an entirely new game every year like Call of Duty. They're still going to do it. They're still going to do it, Nick. We're gonna get Call of Duties. I just wanted to say duties, really, but we're gonna get them from now into eternity. There's gonna be one every year, and they'll find another way to kind of do the Battle Pass like they've been doing with Warzone. But that's clearly what I first think about.
Yeah, what immediately comes to mind for me for Ubisoft in terms of reasons why they may want to go in this direction is, for example, Rainbow Six Siege, right? You have that's a title that has had a lot of success for them. Year after year after year, they've been continuously pushing new content. It's got a pretty good community that's continuing to play the game. And I know they have that Rainbow Six Quarantine game that's supposed to be coming out at some point. I get what they're saying of we really want to kind of channel more of our resources towards those games that have been out for a while and people have become comfortable with, and just focus more on getting those, modernized. And I also know that was it Ubisoft Plus, I think is the name of their subscription model, is a big thing. That's available on pretty much every platform. Even Stadia has Ubisoft Plus available if you want to tack that onto your subscription and just get access to all the Ubisoft games. That obviously that model's working very well for them. So now it's more about, okay, how do we not only get people to buy this subscription model with all these games included, but how do we also further monetize those games by giving you reasons to buy things like a battle pass inside the game? This is even extending to single-player games. I've been playing Immortals Phoenix Rising, which is kind of a Breath of the Wild, but with the pantheon of gods,
So more nudity.
Well, I mean, it's a little scandalous sometimes for a colorful, fun game. I mean, I think it's Greek mythology is pretty out there. I'll say that much. And this game definitely doesn't pull punches in that regard. But yeah, this is a single player game that has a lot of those community functions and even time limited activities akin to a battle pass, where they're giving you reasons to keep coming back and kind of drip feeding that new content, which is a very clever idea, I think, for a single-player game. So I get why they're doing this. The only thing that surprises me is I know that their free-to-play game that they tried, that Battle Royale they came out with, Hyperscape, that sci-fi Battle Royale they attempted, that was a flop, and that they actually had to go back to the drawing board with that one. So, even despite that miss, they still see the benefit of what free-to-play can do for them in the long term.
Well, and I think that some of the smaller games, too, that they've supported have been just as successful in terms of their return on investment. So with that kind of mentality, I think it's easy to say, like, let's try something different. Maybe not invest all of our efforts into a AAA title every year and try some smaller games that can produce fun, reoccurring battle pass models that people want to play. Because the two most popular games of 2020 were arguably Fall Guys and Among Us. And neither one of those games were Fall Guys a little bit more than Among Us, but still, like, it wasn't like we weren't pushing the limits of graphical capabilities here with this.
It's basically a Flash game with voice chat.
Yeah, exactly. So it's awesome for gaming. I really do. I think that is what gaming needs, because we've been getting these regurgitated things every year that we come to know and expect, and there's little change or advancement in what we're playing, and it just feels like something that we could have, it could have been a download or something that Fortnite is easily doing, I would say, with each season that they change it up, where it almost feels like this new game. And so when that's the bar of like, well, this is what the big guys are doing, then you kind of have to change it up and say, we need to go back to the drawing board, like you said, and see what's up. Like, can we do some smaller games that maybe are just more inventive and fun to play? And obviously the answer is yes out there, especially for those like indie developers, which I'm glad we're going to be talking about that later, because it's such an interesting topic to know that there are some small teams out there doing big work, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool to see, a big company like Ubisoft really reconsider their model and say, hey, maybe we need to get with the times. And I mean, like I said, their Ubisoft Plus subscription model definitely is a sign of the times, I think. My only thing that I'll say about battle passes is, and this is kind of a gripe for me and relevant to what's going on right now with Sea of Thieves, is, I was excited to hop onto Sea of Thieves to see, what their Season 1 battle pass would look like.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Bruno, I was kind of disappointed. As somebody that would have been more than happy to drop, $10 or whatever it would be onto that season pass and grind it out, there wasn't anything on that pass that made me think I have to have this. You know what I mean? Like, I was very, very, very underwhelmed. I saw a lot of items that were already in the item shop before that they just recycled and put back in. And even the stuff all the way at like the top tier, tier 100, if that was the top one, was just a couple extra things. And I just didn't see anything that said I have to have that. It didn't quite have that punch, that gotta have it FOMO, I guess, that you get with games like Fortnite, where the stuff in there is just so cool that you almost can't not have it if you have the financial means to do so. So, I think that it's fine to emulate what works well, but you have to be able to put stuff and provide content that gives people a reason to get in there. Because I could, if I were to play 100 hours of Sea of Thieves this month, and that would really be on the high side for my gaming budget of time, I still wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't buy that battle pass. And that's kind of disappointing, right? So yeah, but all right, well, we'll take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll be talking more about EA, Anthem, and of course, stay tuned for that Indie Spotlight interview.
Nick, it seems like we're really in the golden age of podcasting. These days, you can find a quality podcast for just about any topic you can think of.
That's right, Bruno. And a big reason for that is the convenience and versatility of Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast just like ours.
For sure. Anchor has built-in tools that let you record and edit your podcast from your computer or even your phone. And they even distribute your podcast for you automatically to Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more.
And not only is it 100% free with no strings attached, but you can start making money with your podcasts from day one. Literally everything you need for a successful podcast is all waiting for you with Anchor.
Just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
And we are back. And Bruno, this has been something that I knew it was just a matter of time until we talked about on the podcast. When as far as just biggest flops of the decade, everybody knows that Anthem, it didn't quite get to where it needs to go. And I mean, there's a whole conversation about how we got here.
So sad.
But yeah, it was, nobody wanted to see it go the way that it did.
It looked so cool.
Yeah, I mean that first trailer.
That first trailer was amazing. I was like, okay, I'm on board, because an open world Titanfall / Iron Man crossover guy, sign me up. Sign me up. I will blast the lasers and shoot the things.
Right.
I don't even care where we're at or what the plot is, as long as it's like cool and fun to play. But alas,
right. And after it kind of it was kind of circling the drain there a couple of years ago, there was some talk from EA, or at least the studio behind this, that they're like, okay, well, we're going to go back to the drawing board and essentially release what was going to be called Anthem 2.0 or Anthem Next, where they were going to use the foundation and the systems and the combat and all the core stuff of Anthem. Because that's essentially what it was missing, was just content. The actual core gameplay of Anthem was fantastic, and kind of the small dedicated player base that it still has, they're still coming back for that. But it just doesn't have any of the content or ongoing support to really make it work. So yeah, this article is talking about how there has been news that EA is going to be basically deciding what the fate of Anthem is going to be this week. Now, we don't know if there's actually going to be news or announcement, but no preview for news that comes with something like that is going to be positive, in my opinion. That they're going to be having a call about what's going to happen.
So first of all, if you're on the Anthem team, I feel for you, because you get wind of just That's like the worst thing to happen to you, like as a kid, like when you don't get punished right away and you get sent to your room and they say, we're going to talk about this later. That nothing good can come from that. Like that's the worst thing you can do to a child with anxiety is tell them the punishment is coming later.
Right. Well, even worse is like, I mean, they downsized down to about 30 people on the current Anthem team to try and work on the remake. So yeah, even worse is like, you know, multiple siblings disappear as the result of what you all did, but you're told to go to your room. Like, am I next?
Multiple siblings.
Yeah, they've just gone somewhere else.
Where's Dwayne? He's not here. Yeah. What do you mean he's not here? You never had a brother.
He's no longer
so I
family.
Don't know what.
But yeah, you know, it's very, very sad, and you're right that it's a shame that, you know, that these poor guys have basically been working on kind of trying to give Anthem a reason to survive and a reason to be revitalized, and it's very possible that they're going to be getting that call as well. You know, and such is the nature, I guess, of studios. You know, people give Cyberpunk 2077 a lot of flack because CD Projekt Red is behind it, whereas The Witcher 3 was this masterpiece of a game, you know, that they were very much, they founded their reputation on. But what most people don't realize is that the dev team, you know, today versus what was there when The Witcher 3 was being made is completely different. You know, it's the same company almost in name only. So, you know, but yeah, it's very sad because here's my take on it. And I'm curious what you think about it, Bruno, is that I think there's no shot for Anthem. I think at most they'll go into like a maintenance mode. Look at Star Wars Battlefront 2, right? They put out the game and there was the huge backlash over the monetization of it. They eventually caved and made it so that you didn't have to pay all that money for a lot of the core, you know, characters and features of the game. And as a result, I mean, they kind of got some players back. And even to this day, over the last couple months, the player base for Battlefront 2, despite having an announcement that there's not going to be any more updates to the game, that it's still growing. People are coming back and playing it. And so even then, they're still not willing to put any additional support and money and time into it. So if they're not going to do that for Battlefront 2, that still has a dedicated player base, I just don't see how they're going to be able to put the time and effort into something like Anthem to really go for that full redesign and all the time and money, especially in a COVID environment where I'm sure it's much harder and game crunch can be a lot more stressful with the limitations that you know, working from home can create. What do you think?
So I think that part of the increase in traffic or players in Battlefront is probably due to the combo of EA Play with the Game Pass. So because it's a part of the Game Pass now, you can download all the EA Play games, and I think that for sure aided in the amount of players that were returning to the game, and the fact that there's been so much time to fix some of the stuff that they messed up with during the launch. But I agree. I don't think that we're going to see Anthem return in terms of like being revitalized or added in material. I think what they're going to do is they're going to gut it. They're going to gut it for parts, my man. Like it's going to the chop shop, and they're going to, I think what it says, BioWare announced that it would be overhauling the game. This was last year. Yeah. I think that the overhaul is just come up with a new IP that uses the same mechanics. The mechanics are there, like the idea is there, but the execution was a little poor in terms of like the amount of content or the skill tree, whatever you want to, you know, pick apart about the game. So I think that that's what you do if you're EA. You say, you know, there's a lot of great stuff here, like 10 out of 10 stuff, but there's a lot of crap here surrounding it. So we got to get the crap out of here, and we got to start, you know, cleaning up and get some Febreze up in this up in this piece because it smells. It smells.
Hit it with the Drano.
Yeah, we've got some fish smell up in here, and it's starting to seep.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and it's true when I say that, like, when I say it's starting to seep, I mean, like, EA's getting a reputation for not knowing what the heck to do with any of these games, and it makes me worried for the acquisitions that EA goes through, like F1. They just recently reacquired F1 from Codemasters. I believe they acquired Codemasters. So now all of the Codemasters games like Dirt and F1 are going to be under the EA banner. Now that can be really great for funding purposes, but it can also be really bad because I don't want to have to pay $4 to have wet tires to be able to drive in the rain on F1. That's something I don't want. So
your ERS is running a little low. You want to top that off for $2?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's such a tragedy, Bruno. Like none of us want to sit here and enjoy like the schadenfreude of watching something like this go under. When you have such an amazing...
That's a good German word there.
Thank you. Is. Yeah, I know that and Ubermensch because of Team Fortress 2.
Oh, I only really know Kindergarten and Volkswagen, Sassenpfeffer, and...
Hasselhoff. Don't forget Hasselhoff.
Hasselhoff, that's a good one too, yeah. Oh, and sauerkraut.
You got everything you need, man.
I got them all.
Yeah. But yeah, it's such a shame that this game has such a great core gameplay. The people that still talk about this to this day on places like Reddit and like I said, the small but very dedicated community, they know the game doesn't have content. Like they're not like kidding themselves. Yeah. But they keep coming back for that gameplay. And I haven't played the game, but I've seen a lot of gameplay footage. This game, a lot of people say, and I agree, is that it most accurately captures like the essence of a game of like playing as Iron Man. Probably even more so than like a game like Marvel's Avengers, where you actually play as Iron Man.
Yeah, that's
where like
true.
The speed of the combat and just being able to fly around and what you can do and how quickly you can do it. No other game is really capturing that speed. We were just talking about in the last episode, the speed of games and how games like Doom weren't afraid to crank it up to 11. Anthem's gameplay cranks it up to 11. And, the only game that I can really think of that even is remotely similar in terms of gameplay style is Warframe, which is also kind of, space robot, combat and mech suits. And it's just wildly fast-paced, highly entertaining. But that game has so much more content and is also free to play. So they had a unique idea, and I think you're right that almost at this point, you really don't even want the Anthem name because there's just so much stigma behind it, and it's been tarnished. That trying to come back with a new name for it, you're not going to pull like a Final Fantasy 14. Square Enix was so famous for doing that. Where the game launched, it was god awful. They said, "Let's pull it." I was there day one. I know. And they were able to actually rope that in, take like an extra year of development and come out with a quality title. That time has come and gone for Anthem. They've been talking about this Anthem next thing for a while now. And I think, rather than continue to lead people on for something that may not happen with a small team of 30 people for a AAA game, that's not much. They're probably going to need more support than that. I don't think EA is going to be willing to give it. We could be wrong. It sounds like we're kind of in the same boat, that this is probably going to be the end of the line for Anthem. Could just go into maintenance mode. Could just go, right on down.
Merge with the Titanfall team. Get the Titanfall team and get them together, because Titanfall is an amazing game, very, very underrated. I don't like the kind of some of the nerfs that they made from Titanfall 1 to Titanfall 2, but I understand them. But I mean, if you just combine those two gameplays, just imagine the gameplays of like the mech suits, just the different level of mech suits. Oh man, we could even go Inception style and have like 3 suits where like you're just the base pilot, and then you get the like Anthem suit, and then once you get the Anthem suit, you can go full Digimon into the freaking Titan and just go. I mean, that was the sound effect of awesomeness because there was nothing else for me to do at that point. But
wow,
that would be truly awesome. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Yeah, Titanfall has that fast-paced gameplay that would really benefit from a game like Anthem that is definitely even faster paced, and having that free range of movement in flight on top of the fun mech combat. And you're right, Titanfall 2 is such an underrated game. Even Titanfall 1 still has a dedicated player base to this day. They've been having some problems with hackers, but I mean, the game is still there and very much being played. And that speaks volumes. You know, when you make a sequel to a game and people love that, but then you have the original game and people still love that and play that online, you know, that's how you know you have a winning franchise. And oh my God, yeah, you're right.
Got a winner.
We are so overdue for a new Titanfall. So, all right, guys, you heard it here first, EA. That's the play. You got it from the QTB crew.
Well, for the last part of our show, let's go ahead and take a listen to my recent interview with the developers of Positive Concept Games for their upcoming title, Shrine's Legacy. And welcome, everybody, to our very first Indie Spotlight segment, where we're taking a look at some indie games that kind of caught our eye, that Bruno and I went through and looked to see, you know, what games we'd like to play that are up and coming in the indie world. And I stumbled onto these two guys who are our guests today. It is Alan Gabbard and Joseph Duke from Positive Concept Games. Joseph, Alan, how you doing today?
Pretty good. This is Alan.
I'm also doing well. This is Joseph Duke.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for being on the show, guys. And for our listeners, Alan is the creative director of the game, so he's doing the story, the dialogue, concept art, sound effects, that kind of thing. And Joseph Duke is the technical director for the game we're going to be talking about, with the programming, music, and kind of a dynamic duo. Pretty small team, but you guys are getting a lot of cool things done. And what we're talking about today is your upcoming game called Shrine's Legacy. So go ahead and tell our listeners what it's all about.
Shrine's Legacy is a Super Nintendo-styled action RPG game where you follow the story of a character named Rio Shrine and someone named Raymond Nerone who helps him on his journey.
You can play the game in co-op or single player on Windows PC. Currently, we have a beta demo out. So that's pretty nice. It's got a little over 2 hours of content, and we're constantly making updates to it in preparation for our upcoming Kickstarter campaign. I would say the story centers around loss and how people cope with it. That's a big centerpiece to what the game is about, really.
Yeah, and you know, I had a chance to sit down and play through the full demo just a few nights ago, and I definitely got that impression about the theme of loss in the story. And man, as someone that grew up with, you know, that Super Nintendo generation of kind of action RPG, kind of, you know, overworld style games like Zelda, A Link to the Past, and what have you. It definitely struck some nostalgia chords with me. You're definitely doing something right in that regard. My next question is, you know, it seems like that, like I just said, that the game is kind of a love letter to those style of games from the Super Nintendo era. Are there any games in particular from that console generation that resonated with you guys, that kind of inspired you to make the game?
Well, two of the biggest influences have been Final Fantasy VI and A Link to the Past, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Basically, those are like the two games that it's most similar to in its core. It's like the story and like character development and stuff you'd see in Final Fantasy, but with like gameplay you'd see in Zelda. But there's a lot of other smaller, maybe not even smaller, they're still pretty big influences from other Super Nintendo games.
Really, one of the big ones it's not mainstream. It's called the Soul Blazer trilogy. Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, Terranigma. Like, those 3 games are really big on influencing Shrine's Legacy. I would also say Secret of Mana and Trials of Mana, especially their multiplayer, is a big influence because, like I've mentioned, you can play the game in co-op. It's not something you see often enough in RPGs, in my opinion, action-wise or turn-based-wise. I would say that game is a big influence. Heck, Super Metroid, the map system, is
Yeah.
inspired by Super Metroid. I'm going to say, a little bit of Chrono Trigger's in there. Tiny bit. Not a whole lot, but I take it where I can get it. Because it's my favorite Super Nintendo game. But Terra Enigma is close behind that, and so is Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention Final Fantasy VI. Well, I shouldn't say interesting. More, I'm glad you name dropped that, because I think with the Final Fantasy series, so many people, when they start to get into the 6, 7, 8 plus, they start to think about the 3D era of Final Fantasy games, and they don't give enough credit to Final Fantasy VI and just the incredible game that was offered, and kind of the mastery that Squaresoft had over 2D games, before they made that jump. So I can definitely see the influence. And speaking of which, and this is a question for you, Joseph, the site you mentioned that Nobuo Uematsu is a big inspiration for the music of Shrine's Legacy. And I think one of his biggest talents was that he can really capture the emotion of any given scene, or even tell a character's story with a score that matches every moment of the game as you're playing through it. What's it been like to write music alongside Alan's storytelling?
Well, it's been a very interesting challenge, because we are basically two people trying to build an entire game. I don't really get to sit down and focus on music all the time, whereas I'm sure most composers, like Nobuo Uematsu, for example, he basically gets to focus on that. That's one of the biggest challenges. Another challenge is figuring out the motifs and stuff, because one thing I take from Uematsu's, the way he writes music, is using leitmotifs a lot for various characters or things like that. Even the sword itself. A leitmotif is basically a phrase or melody that goes along with a character or an object or an emotion in the game, or just it's basically a motif you'll hear throughout the game in various different pieces of music. So I've been making sure to implement that into the writing. Also, taking the scene itself and trying to imagine what the music would be for it is definitely something that applies. Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is just having not a lot of time to spend on the music, but still trying to make it as good as I can.
Well, I have to say, for such a small team, one of the things that I thought was just incredible about playing through was that option to switch the soundtrack between that 16-bit chiptune style and more of a robust modern version of the same song. Not just transitioning from one track to the next, but actually being able to switch back and forth in real time is a really cool concept, and one that I think helps to make your game stand out and be unique in terms of its soundtrack. So kudos for that. And my next question for Alan is about the story of Rio and Rayma. It's based on the playthrough that I had. It kind of seems that each character has a unique motivator for why they're kind of going through this story of trying to get these gems. As the game's story writer, I'm glad that you're on, because I've always wanted to pick the brain of someone who's trying to make that classic RPG style of story. Is your method to avoid or embrace the countless plot tropes that are found in these types of RPG games?
I find the premise of the game can come off as kind of generic on the surface. When people actually play the game, they might see the story kind of pushes back against cliches and tropes to an extent. Especially since I know the whole story. I mean, it's not all completely evident there, but some people have mentioned, oh yeah, this is different from the typical generic trope. But I will say my biggest influence in writing for this game in particular was Avatar: The Last Airbender, where it kind of has a generic start to it, or rather a generic premise, I should say. But as you watch the show, it's just all about the execution and how the characters are developed. So I would say I'm not really trying to embrace it. The tropes, I mean, maybe some of them, because yeah, I mean, for a moment there's a girl that's in trouble, but she doesn't really get kidnapped. So it's what is this writer going for, is how I think some people might perceive it. Is she going to get kidnapped later? I don't know. You'll have to play the full game when it's done to find out. But yeah, I would say I don't really like tropes and cliches. I want to come up with my own ideas, but I do embrace some of it, like I said. And for example, it's very much a hero's journey archetype. So I do embrace that kind of storytelling, which is in a lot of games like ours, Japanese RPG style games.
Yeah, I definitely see where, when the game started and there was that scene between Ryo and his childhood friend talking about, having to rescue his princess, and then that scene where the village is, raided, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go, she's going to get captured, but it doesn't play out that way. You're right, it is kind of it subverts expectations. And then, rather than her be this kind of damsel in distress during the story, she plays a kind of a different role of kind of being a moral compass from home, from safety, of like, hey, what's he up to? What's he doing with this person now? So I definitely see what you're saying about, not trying to totally embrace it, but not trying to totally avoid it either, right? But still take it in your own direction. Question for both of you is, and you talked about this earlier, that the game offers co-op, and it's not just something that you tacked on afterwards and said, hey, if you want to play co-op, you can, but rather it was clearly well thought out from the beginning, in that you have these two characters that, have this intertwining story, and you can play as either if you are playing in single player. In an industry where these types of narrative-driven adventure games are mostly single player, what made you decide to incorporate co-op?
Well, the most simple answer to that is we wanted to be able to play a game in co-op that we make. But there's a lot more to it than that, and like reasons for it. Especially action RPG games, it's not common to have co-op, or RPG games in general, I should say. But if you play like Final Fantasy VI and you go to the config, you'll notice you can actually set it to 2-player mode. Stuff like that has always been really cool. I think the first like full-on action RPG I ever played where it had co-op was Tales of Symphonia, and it just kind of blew my mind at the time.
Also, just growing up together and both loving RPGs like Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, etc. It's like, why don't more of these games offer co-op gameplay? Like, is this a possibility? So yes, from the very beginning of development, co-op was in mind, because man, when these games have co-op, they're just so much more fun and enjoyable with a friend. I don't think RPGs have to be necessarily a single player experience. Not multiplayer in the sense of, oh, I gotta go shoot my friends in this game, ha ha ha. No, like online play or co-op, like in the sense you're working together to progress through the game's story, through the gameplay. So yeah, I'm a bigger fan of co-op than competitive play anyway, most of the time.
Oh no, I totally get that, and yeah, I've reached an age, I think, where I'm just kind of done with competitive games, and I just want that fun cooperative experience. And if I recall correctly, the game will allow you to play through Steam, to play like remotely with a friend, right?
That is correct, yes. And it's the only way to play online right now.
It does require a pretty good internet connection, so that's a disclaimer on that, but it does work.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess my last question for you is, one thing that that stood out to me when I was kind of researching your game and everything that you had, up until this point, is that you guys have a full, robust, fully playable demo long before you even actually launched your Kickstarter. And I think that gives you a big advantage, in that a lot of Kickstarters will just give you maybe a concept video if you're lucky, and maybe you'll get a playable demo down the road as a backer. But you've kind of really bucked that trend. But in terms of your Kickstarter, when can we expect that to go live roughly? And do you have any kinds of perks in you're planning for backers?
We had planned to launch it in February originally, but it's been delayed indefinitely, because we just don't feel like we have enough of a following right now to get the amount of funds that we need to finish the game properly and the way we want to. So we have an idea internally what we would like to do, but it might be delayed beyond that. So we can't really say right now. So
other than, well, we plan to have the Kickstarter go live sometime this year.
Yes, we can say that. It's going to happen this year, not next year, because you got to make the dive at some point. As for perks, we have ideas for physical rewards, and
we're probably going to be careful with physical rewards, because those are a lot of work. But we'll probably have something for it.
Early backer stuff like you get to design NPCs or an enemy, stuff like that. Definitely, we've thought long and hard about the perks, and we've got them written down.
but we still need to go through and just finalize it and make sure that we want to do everything that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be careful. And I think you're right. A lot of Kickstarters, I think, get themselves in trouble with promising, physical rewards that, later on, for whatever reason, logistics or whatever it might be, that it doesn't pan out. Though. So, I totally get it. And, you've definitely got a backer with me whenever it does go live. And to all of our listeners, if you want to support this kind of game, this kind of cool love letter to that retro SNES RPG style, make sure you go to their website. It's at positiveconceptgames.com. You can also go to Kickstarter and just search for Positive Concept Games or Shrine's Legacy, or just get the link through their website, and you can sign up to get alerts whenever that Kickstarter does go live.
Thank you for telling us you're going to be a backer. That's great. We really appreciate it. One thing I don't want to do is I don't want to disappoint people. If the campaign is successful, I don't want to not deliver on the promises that we make, which happens a lot in Kickstarter campaigns. It really means a lot to me when people say, oh man, I'm definitely going to back this, because I don't want to let you guys down.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as time goes by, I know you've gotten some a good response on sites like Reddit that you've got a good product here. And like I said, having a 2-3 hour demo right out of the gate is something to be proud of, and something that we could really sink our teeth into, with extra things like gems on the side that we could collect to kind of build out our character or progress. That I could even now go back into that demo and kind of explore a little more than I did before. So again, congratulations on everything you've done up to this point with just 2 people. And again, everybody, make sure to check out positiveconceptgames.com to check out that demo, get on that email list so they know that there's more interest in the game, and hopefully we see more from you two very soon.
Oh, I want to mention one more thing. It is just the 2 of us as core members, but we do have artists who are helping us here and there with some of the pixel art.
Specific missions, yeah.
Yes, specific art. Not most of it is Joe. We do have people helping us, so
right,
to give credit to the people who have helped us in the game.
That makes sense, I guess. Going through the game, definitely what was always in the back of my mind was, wow, 2 guys did this like from start to finish.
Oh, everything in the game is Joe's right now, but we're about to get new portraits, for example.
Well, except for the title screen. The title
Yes.
screen was Shrimp Toast helped us out.
Yeah, she's on Twitter, and she's magnificent digital artist. So and we're gonna have new portraits soon by Toa. That's what he's called on Twitter, and he's been great to work with. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the other people who are helping us. But yes, it is mostly me and Joe.
Awesome. Well, again, everybody, make sure to check him out at positiveconceptgames.com. And it was a blast to play, and I think you'll all enjoy it as well. Again, Joseph Allen, thank you so much for coming on the show, and good luck with the game.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Wow, that was really interesting. And the first thing I noticed was the passion in their voices, just the gung-ho attitude that they have toward this project is clearly visible, like in the product and like in the way they're approaching this. Like, they're super excited about having something, doing something together, just kind of like us, you know what I mean? Like, I got that kind of vibe of like, they're kind of like doing something like us, but in their own way. Like, hey, let's get together and make a podcast. Hey, let's get together and make a video game. And in this love letter to the games that they grew up with, that we grew up with, like Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, and like you were talking about Chrono Trigger, and some of these like newer games. Like, I got a kind of like Stardew Valley vibe from it almost when looking at it as well. But then with the combat, it looked a lot like Zelda, and Link running around with the sword, just like tearing up, pots and all these different, whatever it, may have been from, Zelda translated over to Shrine's Legacy. But it was really interesting, and very, very, very cool, especially that something like this exists and needs support. Like, that's another reason why we're here, is to like shed some light on this, because I know how hard it can be when you're putting all of your passion into a project and then it doesn't get the attention that you feel it deserves, and this deserves the attention. Like, it deserves backing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what their Kickstarter will be, because they mentioned things like having characters, NPCs in the game. How cool would that be, Nick, to be an NPC in the game? I'm backing. Like, that, I'm on that. Like, my wife's gonna be like, what do you want for your birthday? Yep, what it do? I am there, because I totally want to be like an NPC in the game now.
Well, it's got to be fantasy style. Like, what doth it do, good sir?
Oh yeah, what doth it do?
What doth it does? What doth it does?
What doth it doth?
Oh, put that on a t-shirt. I love it.
Oh my gosh. But seriously, like, and then the thing that you mentioned about going back to or switching between music, it made me instantly think of the Master Chief Collection and being able to switch from like legacy, the original graphics, to these like updated new graphics, like at the push of a button. That is so cool. Tell me about that. Like, did you that you said that was your favorite part, right?
I mean, I'm a music guy, so I love a good chiptune. And so, when I saw that initially, because it wasn't really advertised when you were kind of getting up to the game that there was this mode where you could switch between two different styles of music. They just said that they have a chiptune style soundtrack that's influenced by big names like Nobuo Uematsu.
Yeah.
And, as soon as I go in, it's like, oh, by the way, press F5 to like switch between soundtracks. I'm like, are you serious? Like, this is two guys doing this, and they've got like an alternate soundtrack for every song in their demo, and it sounds like it'll be what they do for the release as well. Not just like, hey, let me push a button and like it just starts a new track from the beginning. Instead, it's like, I can listen to the specific part and the specific instruments that I have, but immediately swaps over to like real sampled instruments or what sounds like it instead of a chiptune. And that made my playthrough so much cooler, because it's just a feature that you wouldn't expect, and you can see little things like that, and the co-op that like we talked about in the interview isn't really normal for this style of RPG adventure game. And you can see where they have such a clear vision for, here's how we're gonna throw back to the past, but here's how we're gonna make it our own. I think the execution up until this point has been flawless. So yeah, I'm really, really happy that we were able to get them on the show. And wish them all the best. And I said it in the interview, but I'll say it again. Please support these kinds of people. These developers. They need they need to help.
For sure.
Because like you said, that indie games market is so saturated right now, where everyone that has access to the many different game developing tools like Unity can put games out there, and it's so easy for a quality title like this to get lost in the noise. So definitely check them out at positiveconceptgames.com, and we'll be putting the links to their website and their Kickstarter preview page in the description. So whatever podcast you're listening on, you can go to the description at the very bottom. That information will be there, so you can hop onto their site. Just sign up for the email newsletter at the very least, so you can get some updates, and they get a little bit more interest in the game. And it's that's like you said, that's the vision, is we want to help these guys out and and play games that we want to play. Like, I want to play this game. Help me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
let me play it. I want more.
Bring this to the indie games for Xbox. Xbox has that like indie game program. Bring this on Xbox. Let's do this. Get these guys some help and get this game to the moon, or
to the moon, baby.
To the platform. To the moon, baby.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, that's probably a good point to wrap things up. And, like you had said, please, if you can, drop us a review on Apple iTunes. It means the world to us and helps us get a little more exposure. And anything else for him, Bruno?
Stay beautiful, and thank you so much for just tuning in and listening and being part of our podcast and being a part of Team QTB. That's what it's about. It's about having a network of people. So we're just excited to be here, talking to each other and talking to you guys about the stuff that we love and about what's going on in the gaming world. So we've got some big things coming via the website, so be sure to check that out, quitthebuild.com. Until next time, for Nick, I'm Bruno.
And for Bruno, I'm Nick.
Peace out. What it do?